Okay, here we go. Welcome, everybody. My name is Susan Macbeth. I'm the founder and owner of Adventures by the Book, based in San Diego, California, in the USA. And joining us are two very, very, very special guests from across the pond in UK. Kate Thompson, author, and 95-year-old Renee Salt, which I told her a few minutes ago. I can't believe she's 95 because she doesn't look it at all. But I want to welcome everybody's joining us today. We have over 100 people signed up for the event from over 5 countries around the world: England, the UK, Canada, Poland, Germany, and of course the United States. And this just goes to show that regardless of politics, books connect people around the world, and we welcome all of you and glad you are all here. We even have somebody from the European Holocaust Memorial Foundation joining us, so welcome to you as well. Just a little bit of background for those of you unfamiliar with Adventures by the Book. We're based in California, and we host what we like to call multi-sensorial events, which means that we like to bring in an element of something sensorial to you, whether it's drinking tea with a 95-year-old Holocaust survivor, or we travel around the world. We do a lot of virtual events. So for those of you who are not in the Southern California region, we do a lot of virtual events, and you can join us on adventuresbythebook.com. We have our own virtual book club that we run every month with a best-selling author. We also do quarterly book bingos, which is a really fun Zoom experience. We play a game of virtual book bingo while you're talking to 6 authors. That's really fun. So I hope that you get on our mailing list, that you join us. We'd love to see you from around the world. We have a lot of Canadians who are joining us now, and we'd love for a lot of Europeans to join us as well. So we welcome everybody. Let's see, what else do I need to say? Oh, I wanted to, let's see, I'm looking at all my notes, which I scribbled, and I can't even read my own writing. But today's event, I'm going to introduce our 2 speakers. They're going to chat together. Then we'll open it up to audience Q&A. So if you do have questions, be thinking of them. You can type them in the Q&A button on the toolbar of your Zoom screen or in the chat box, either way. So joining us today is Kate Thompson, who is the best-selling British author of multiple books, including the Wartime Book Club, which is wonderful. And of course, her new book with Renee, Do Not Cry When I Die. All right, I'm trying to get this right on the screen, which is being released in the United States in 2 days on Tuesday, but it's already been released in the UK, and it was an instant Sunday Times bestseller. Congratulations. Oh, there we go. A Mother's Promise is what it's called. Okay, wonderful. So congratulations to you. Renee, sorry, I keep calling her Renee. Renee was born in Poland in 1929. She and her mother survived both Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen. After the Holocaust, she returned to Poland to try to find any surviving family members and was able to connect with an aunt. They moved to Paris, where she met her husband, a British military policeman who helped liberate Bergen-Belsen. Remarkable. I'm getting chills as I'm reading this. They married, had 2 children, and she now lives in London and has 5 grandchildren. She credits her survival to her mother, and she is here today with Kate to share the incredible story. Again, an instant Sunday Times bestseller, and I hope it does the same in the US when it's released on Tuesday. Congratulations to both of you, and a very special welcome, Kate and Renee.
Oh, thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
very much for that introduction.
What a glowing introduction. Thank you so much. And it's so incredible to see so many people here from so many different countries around the world.
Yeah.
And quite strange for Renee and I, because we're sitting today in her sheltered housing accommodation in Hendon, North London. And for so long, it's just been Renee and I and a big pot of tea, Renee sharing her memories with me. And suddenly to know that we're being
Watch
yeah,
all over the world.
around the world. It's
Fantastic.
It's an incredible feeling.
Yeah.
How does it make you feel, Renee?
Very proud.
So you should. So you should. So I guess we're just going to start at the beginning. We've got an awful lot to get through. Renee and I's interviews took place over the course of many months. I mean, we've been working on the book for the best part of a year now. So, you know, our conversations came out gradually. So we've got a lot to cover. So I'm going to start, Renee, like I did with you when we began the interview process, which is really at the beginning and very specifically about your wonderful childhood, which every time I know you talk about your family makes you smile, because Renee was raised in Stunskowola, which is a city in the middle of Poland. And she had what I think anyone could describe as an idyllic childhood. Tell us a little bit about it, Renee.
Well, we had a lovely home to begin with, and we had a lot of family who came visiting all the time, and we used to go and visit them, you know, several times a year. So the life was good.
Yeah, and
I
I always remember you telling me your favorite time of year was Pesach or Passover.
Yeah.
And why was that? Why was that, Renee?
Because first of all, the food was fantastic. Like the family were one of the best cooks in the whole world.
Oh.
Yes,
What did they cook? I can almost smell it.
It all came out on Passover.
Oh.
And yes.
What did the women used to cook? I know they all gathered together in the kitchen, didn't they? Your mother and your Auntie Gittel.
Yes.
And your bubby.
Yes.
What sort of things would they cook for Passover?
Well, a lot of chicken soup.
Oh.
Used to be that good chicken soup.
Of course.
Not like what you buy today in
the proper chicken soup.
Proper chicken soup. Yes. And lovely meat.
Yeah.
Duck and chicken and whatever you want.
Yeah. And there was a real sense of security being in such an extended family. I think your father was one of 8, was it?
Well, yeah, my father was one of 8 and my mother one of 4. So I had lots of aunts and uncles, many cousins, and a very large extended family as well.
I believe it ran to over 200 members, didn't it? Yeah. So, so a real beautiful, cultured, you know, elegant family as well.
Yes.
Your father was a chief accountant?
My father was chief accountant in the largest textile firm in Europe. He had a wonderful job and he had a really lovely lifestyle.
And there's a wonderful picture, isn't there, of your mother and father walking along the street in Stunskowola, and they look to me like they just stepped straight out of the pages of a silent movie. You know, they're so immaculately turned out.
Yes.
And that was a real
very elegant. Both of them.
Yeah. But Stunskowola, I believe, was the centre of the textile industry, like nearby Łódź. It was a huge producer of clothing, of which your father's factory.
Materials. Clothing, yes.
Yeah. So you had a little sister, Stenya, who was
2 years younger.
2 years younger. What are your favourite memories of Stenya?
Playing together, always playing together, and I still miss her very much.
You were peas in a pod, weren't you?
With every passing day, I miss her more.
Yeah. It's true. You always said that to me right from the beginning. That your sense of your memories, how you see Stenya every day increases, doesn't it? It doesn't.
No,
the passing of time doesn't diminish, does it?
No, not at all.
In fact, this is Stenya here, isn't it? I can show people. This was Stenya taken when she was about 6 years old, isn't it?
Yeah.
A lovely little girl, isn't she?
Yeah.
So really, your parents did a very good job at protecting you from the growing anti-Semitism and the threat of fascism. But nevertheless, it still began to impact on your life. And I think, do you feel able to share the story really about when you were in Kalisz with your grandparents and a terrible thing happened one Friday night to your parents?
Yeah, that was on holiday actually.
Yeah.
When we went on holiday in 1939. And my mother and my father, I think as well, my uncles, they went out on a Friday night after dinner. They went out like for a walk and they were beaten up. My mother got it the worst. And all night long, grandmother, my Bubba, had to stand and make compresses all night long to reduce the bruising.
I know that very much stuck out in your mind, didn't
Yeah.
it? On Friday, the 1st of September, 1939, while your mother was preparing for Shabbat, she was polishing her silver candlesticks and readying herself. German warplanes and tanks invaded Poland. What do you remember?
Friday night.
It was a Friday morning.
Friday
What?
morning.
Yeah. What do you remember of the invasion of Poland?
What I remember is that we ran away from our home. I don't really know the proper reason why. Maybe because we went to a larger town to keep, safer.
I think there was safety in numbers, wasn't there? That was the
number, yes. Numbers.
But Stinskovola was very badly bombed, wasn't it?
Yes.
Where did you
My father's factory was bombed. So many bombs we threw into that factory that day. So his work was already finished. He had nothing to go back to.
Well, that's right. And it wasn't long before the Nazis were everywhere in Stinskovola and you were thrown out of your home. What do you remember of coming back that time to find your home had been taken over?
We came back and the landlord, Locke, he came to meet us. He saw us, so he came to meet us. He told us we've got nothing to go back to. I tried to save your home, but they didn't listen to me. They opened it up, and if I wouldn't have been of German origin, I would have been shot because I tried to save your home for what they found there.
Yeah. And after that, Renee, you and the rest of the Jewish inhabitants of Stinskovola were forced into a ghetto, which was formed in 1940 until its liquidation in August 1942. When you were first sent into the ghetto, there was 7,500 local Jewish people, but by March 1942, thousands and thousands more from the surrounding villages.
They sent them into our ghetto.
Yeah.
We were very overcrowded.
Yeah, and the chronic overcrowding meant that on average there was 8 people
to one room.
Yeah. What's your memories of that time?
Very difficult because we didn't have anything anymore. We didn't have any bedding, clothes, and winter was coming and we didn't have any warm clothes or anything.
No food.
No food.
And you were only 11 years old, but you were put to work in a factory, I believe, making socks for
10.
10.
Only 10.
I was 10.
I was 10.
But very, very young. You were a child, in essence.
Yeah.
So you went from this lovely school where you really enjoyed to suddenly finding yourself in 12, 13 hours a day, hard labour.
Yes.
What was that
I was
like?
making socks for the army. The machine was twice as tall as I was. I had to stand on a stool to reach it.
Seems inconceivable for anyone listening. Imagine a 10 or 11-year-old child working 13 hours a day in a factory.
Making socks. Yeah.
And the sights in that ghetto were terrible, weren't they?
Terrible things happened in the ghetto. Hangings, shootings. You're sending out people from the ghetto.
Your life changed overnight, really, didn't it?
Absolutely.
And I think it's really important to overstate as well how isolated Renee and her family were in the ghetto. There were no wirelesses, no newspapers, so you knew nothing.
No, you had to give away you had a wireless, you had to give it up.
Yeah. So you knew nothing of the world at war, did you?
You didn't have anything. We didn't have newspapers or letters.
Yeah.
Nothing came into the ghetto.
So the Blitz in London, the bombing of Pearl Harbor.
We didn't know anything.
Yeah.
What happened.
Like almost like being in a soundproof cage, wasn't it?
Yes.
Which is inconceivable because when we think about the war, we know what history happened. We understand it, but to be in it and not know.
No, we didn't know anything what was happening.
Just
hoping that it will finish quickly, soon. But we didn't know what was going on, so we didn't know what we're hoping for.
One thing I know, and it's probably important to establish this very early on, that kept you nourished, for want of a better word, throughout your time in the ghetto was your mother's faith. She never lost her faith in the Almighty, did she? And
never, never. Her prayers, I still remember every night when she went to bed, before she went to bed, she said her prayers, and she said her prayers with us, the children as well.
And it's the same prayer that you
I
still
still say tonight.
Yeah.
These
well,
days.
you will tonight before you go to bed. Yeah, and I think it's really important for us to understand that, how integral that faith was, and what an anchor it gave her, what a backbone it was for the pair of you in a way, throughout all those long years of suffering. On August the 8th, 1942, you turned 13 in the ghetto. How was that marked? I mean,
on August
the 8th, 1942.
I was 13.
Yeah, but birthdays just simply passed by.
No, we didn't keep birthdays.
How could you?
No, we didn't keep any birthdays or anything. All we were doing was praying. That kept us going.
Then 16 days, really, after your 13th birthday, on the 24th of August, you were woken at dawn to the cries of Ali Yuden Raus, all Jews out. Do you feel able to share the events of that dark morning?
Yes. My father came home from work. He was working in the police station, in the administration. And he came home in the evening and he didn't know anything. And in the first thing in the morning, in the early hours, we were woken up with screams. Ali wouldn't arouse. All Jews come outside. Now, by the time we heard already about the young children and old people being murdered all over the country, so we took our grandparents, my mother's parents, and a little 4-year-old cousin of mine, my Auntie Itu's little boy. And we hid them in the attic, fully expecting to come back soon. In fact, it was the last time we ever saw them. We later learned they were all shot. And that was that. We had to go when we walked outside. The streets were already chock-a-block with people. We all followed one another like sheep to the slaughter. We came to a large square, which was surrounded with assessment and Gestapo. First they gave an order that we must all sit down so we cannot be overlooked better. And then they gave an order that parents should hand over all children up to 18 years of age. Now, to describe the scene that followed, it's not possible. I can only give you an idea about it. The children crying, the mother screaming, "Almighty God, help us," still ring in my ears today. You could soon see the children running towards the officers. They were all packed into these closed-in lorries, and taken away. While all this was going on, my mother tried to hide me on one side of her and my little sister on the other side. I couldn't really hide anybody. It was an open field. But she tried her best. It didn't take very long. They got hold of my sister, and my mother got a beating. And that little girl stood in front of this assessment, and she said to him, "Please don't hit her. That's not my mother," because she wanted to protect her. She said, "That's not my mother." She ran off with this assessment with tears running down her face. We never saw her again. Still miss her. With every passing day, I miss her more.
It's just unfathomable for us to hear this story and see the pain and the anguish that it still causes you today, to relive it. Thank you for sharing that. that story with us. I know that of all the children taken from Stunskovola, there were only three left.
Three left,
of which
yeah.
you were one.
I was one of them.
And
I
from,
have
the,
a lot to be grateful for, I suppose, in a way.
from there, you were marched to the Jewish cemetery where the selections.
When they had all the children, they lined us up in fives. They took us to the Jewish cemetery. Outside the cemetery, I witnessed the first of the many selections that I was going to go through. On each side of the grand doors stood the SS with their batons directing one to the right, one to the left. They took all old people, pregnant women, people who didn't look fit for work, all went to one side, the rest to the other side. When I got through, I was together with my parents and one of my mother's sisters. All the rest of the family were on the unlucky side. The lorries were coming along all the time, filling up and taking the people away to a place that once they got there, they were never seen again.
Now, the women around you began to fear, I think, for your safety, didn't they? They realised that you were a child that had sort of slipped through. And they did something quite remarkable, didn't they? Really?
Yes, some people made my face up. If someone found a lipstick in their pocket, someone else found a powder compact. They tried to make my face up, put a scarf on my head, and anything to make me look a little bit older. One lady changed her high-heeled shoes for mine. But nevertheless, just before we left the cemetery, I was spotted by an assessment. He came rushing along from the other side of the cemetery. He noticed me. He came rushing along and pointing at me, said, "You stand up. How old are you?" Because I was paralyzed with fright. I couldn't stand up. I couldn't answer. My father, who was sitting near me, said to him, "She's 18 years old. I know her."
And your life was saved again.
Yeah.
One of many miracles, really, to have happened throughout your experiences.
Yeah.
From there, I know you were transported to the Łódź ghetto.
The lodge,
yeah, which was even larger.
They took us to a railway line, and guards were collecting all our valuables. Whatever we had, we gave away. But my father had a ring on which was deeply embedded. He couldn't get it off. So rather than to tell them and start with them, kept it on, hoping for the best. We were packed in onto these cattle trucks very tightly. And off we went on an overnight journey. The journey only takes, before the war, it took 1 hour. This time they carried us about for 24 hours, and over 100 people suffocated on that journey because these cattle trucks have no windows. They only have a few slats on top, and people suffocated. We had no air. We had had nothing to eat or to drink since we left our homes a few days earlier.
And there was a heat wave too, wasn't there?
Yeah.
It was 40 degrees Celsius. Can't even imagine what it was like to be stuffed like cattle, really, wasn't it? You arrived in the Łódź ghetto. There were 200,000 people living there, so it was huge, far bigger than the Stunskovola ghetto. Yeah. But the area was a slum, wasn't it? There was no sanitation, no plumbing. The job of removing the excrement of 200,000 people fell to workers who had to drag it to the ghetto gates.
Whenever they eat that, the smell was terrible. People were dying. They were getting ill from it.
Yeah. But your mother again did something which, to my mind, showed her resilience and her resourcefulness. What did she do on arrival?
When we came to the lodge ghetto, we were so hungry we could have eaten wood. So she disappeared for a few minutes. And when she came back, she held a half a cabbage and her cardigan was missing. She obviously exchanged her cardigan, the only cardigan she had now. She exchanged it for a half a cabbage.
And unbeknown to you, and this was something we discovered through the research of the book, Renee's father also gave you a gift, really, for want of a better word. When he arrived at the Department of Vital Statistics, he falsified Renee's date of birth to make her 16 instead of the 13 she actually was. And so that's so that you wouldn't be deemed a useless mouth, as the Nazis termed it. You were able to work, weren't you?
Yes.
Which you did.
Yes. We all found work in the Lodge Ghetto. I was helping making uniforms for the army.
I mean, people working within the Lodge Ghetto didn't know it was one of the last and most isolated ghettos in the Third Reich, but the labour of Jewish slaves was making the Reich a fortune, wasn't it? I mean, your slave labour.
They made a fortune for the Germans.
Yeah, I mean, millions of Reichsmarks, wasn't it?
Yes.
Tell us your memories of the Lodge Ghetto, because I think it was very soon after your arrival in August 1942, there was yet another selection.
Yeah, 2 weeks after we arrived in the Lodge Ghetto, there was a selection in our block. We never knew when the Germans came along with their closed-in lorries making selections. This time they took my grandmother away. My father was very, very upset, to say the least.
And you told me, Renee, about another miracle that you said you witnessed at this self-same selection.
If you didn't stay there and see it, you probably can't believe it. One of the assessment noticed the ring on my father's finger, and he said, I want the ring. But my father explained that he can't get it off. So this assessment tried. He fiddled around with it backwards and forwards. He could tell that he'll never get that ring off. So he said to the guard next to him, "Fetch an axe and chop the finger off," just like that. Now, I haven't seen miracles during the Holocaust, but this you had to stay there and see it to believe it. Because as he finished saying these few words, the ring on its own, without any prompting, slid off the finger so loose that as though it would have been 5-6 sizes too big, rolled on its own and stopped by the assessment speed. And he said to my father, "Pick it up," which of course father picked the ring up and gave it to him. In return, he got some very hard kicks. That was the end of the ring.
Unbelievable. I know you can see it in your mind's eye, can't you?
That was unbelievable.
So Renee, once again, your mother saved your life within the ghetto. I think it was in 1943. Understandably, because of the conditions in the ghetto, Renee fell very, very ill with typhus, and you were admitted to a contagious
hospital.
Yeah. And whilst there, Renee's, there was another selection, wasn't there? Would you feel able to explain the events of that night?
Apparently the SS came along and emptied out the whole hospital. But once again I was safe because they didn't come into the contagious ward that I was in. But my parents, who stood outside the hospital all night long, they were afraid to leave me alone, leave me there. They took me out. They said to the doctor, Mama said to the doctor, "I'm taking my daughter home." Ill as I was, she dragged me through the streets and she took me home with her. She didn't want to leave me in the hospital anymore.
Such incredible bravery. She was risking her life because, of course, nobody was allowed outside of the ghetto after 9 p.m. There was a curfew. She could have been shot on the spot. She waited outside that hospital.
She took me home and put me to bed. And I was laying locked in on my own all day long, very, very ill.
And then, unbeknown to you and your family, Renee, the fate of occupied Poland's last surviving ghetto had already been sealed, because in May 1944, Heinrich Himmler, obviously the second most powerful Nazi after Hitler, had ordered the liquidation of the entire ghetto. Yeah. So over 7,000 Jews at that point were deported to Kulmhof, but the facilities weren't large enough to comply with the final solution. So they turned to another camp, which of course many more people will have heard of.
But we didn't hear
of course, you didn't know about that.
It. Auschwitz-Birkenau.
Can you tell us about your arrival at Auschwitz-Birkenau?
When we arrived, after a whole night riding, the screaming and bellowing, get off the train, get a move on, be quick.
Good time.
My father jumped off first, and I jumped after him. By the time I jumped off, I didn't see him anymore. Without a kiss or goodbye, he disappeared like into thin air. I never saw him again.
And then there was a terrifying march through the camp to what was then known as the sauna.
They lined us up in fives, and that selection was being conducted by the infamous Dr. Mengele, the butcher of Auschwitz. He learned that later. He was so terrifying in his polished black boots. It was just terrifying just to look at him.
And here your mother did something that was astonishingly brave.
I was directed to the right, and my mother was directed to the left. And before I started screaming, before I had a chance to know what was happening, she was back with me. She was directed in one direction and she came back. How? I don't know. I'll never know. They must have got blind for a split second, because there is no way that they couldn't see that. And yet she managed to change the lines.
Yeah.
And she came back to me to be with me.
And I think it's worth stressing for anyone, I'm sure everybody can understand what we mean by the lines, but the line that Sala Berkovic had been directed to went straight to the gas chamber.
Gas chambers, yes.
So her defying the will.
Wherever they saw two people holding hands, they would deliberately split them up, one to the right and one to the left. So they split us up. But before I had a chance to scream out or know what was happening, she was back with me. I don't know how, I'll never know.
And it was here on arrival, wasn't it, really, that a Jewish guard, turned to you, or I believe it was known as a capo, turned to you and said, "You have arrived now at Auschwitz-Birkenau."
Yes, some of the guards moved in and they said, you are now in Auschwitz-Birkenau. This is the place where people are being taken straight to the gas chambers. Cold shiver ran through us.
Because you knew, of course, that people were being sent to their deaths, but nobody could even, because it's outside the scope of human imagination to understand what that actually entailed.
What it meant.
And of course, it's worth stating as well that the Lodz ghetto was very isolated. There was not much in the form of resistance as opposed to the Warsaw ghetto. So for the people of Łódź ghetto to arrive at Auschwitz-Birkenau and suddenly, the rupture of their families and to understand what the enormity of this place represented.
Yes. We didn't know.
So when you were sent to the showers, Renee, can you tell us what went through your mind?
Well, we were expecting yes. We did expect yes. They told us that you are being taken straight to the gas chambers.
But not gas.
Not gas. We must have been the lucky ones. Water came through, not gas.
You were also greeted on arrival by a capo who really sort of brutalized you, didn't she, this woman? I know that this woman stood out in your memories of your time at Auschwitz.
Her name was Irma Griese. She on her own was worse than all the assessment put together. She was so cruel when she didn't have to be. She was terribly cruel.
And you, so unlike in Stinskovola and the Łódź ghetto, there was no work for you at Auschwitz. You were forced to sit in an empty barrack, so no bunk beds, just sit.
There was a few bunk beds.
But day after night, you just sat in lines, didn't you?
Yeah, we had to sit in lines. On the stone floor, on the concrete floor. Sitting between each other's legs, packed like sardines. In this position, we had to sit day and night.
Now, at the end of August, you were quite suddenly taken out of Auschwitz-Birkenau and you were deported to Hamburg in Germany. Of course, no one ever told you where you were going. You were just
one night
shoved into trains.
We were taken out of the truck, left sitting near the railway lines, which came in right inside the camp. We were sitting there all night long. In the morning, they gave us each 2 shoes, not necessarily to the pair. It could have been a shoe in a sandal or a sandal in a boot, and not your size either. So people tried to swap around with one another the best they could. And we were packed into these waiting cattle trucks.
And sent to Germany, wasn't it? Which now Germany at that time had been very badly bombed by the Allies. So Renee and the other prisoners were sent to work on demolition sites in the city centre.
They sent us to Hamburg. They sent us to Hamburg Harbour into the docks.
And it's just you and your mother at this stage, isn't it? Because Gittel had left in the Łódź ghetto. Your father had been taken on arrival at Auschwitz. So it was just you and your mother. Yeah. What's your memories of that time working in slave labour?
Very frightening. The work was very, very hard, very dangerous. We had to take apart the bombed out blocks of flats. We had to put in whole bricks onto one lorry and broken bricks on another lorry. My skin, my hands, I didn't feel them. They were frozen cold. And
let's put some context in here as well. Renee was only still wearing the outfit that she'd been given on arrival at Auschwitz-Birkenau, which was
a men's pajama jacket and a large skirt which wouldn't stand up. Mother tore off a piece from the pajama jacket and tied up the skirt that shouldn't fall down.
But no underwear?
No underwear, no stockings, no nothing. And it was so cold.
I think that winter of 1944 was the coldest winter on record.
I suffered from cold more than from hunger, if that's possible.
You got frostbite, didn't you?
Frostbite, yes. Yes, which I suffered for years after the war.
And also to set further into your mind's eye, if you can imagine this, the buildings that Renee was working on or in between were being constantly under bombardment by the Allies. So every now and again, the air raid, well, at least every day, the air raid.
We were so happy though. Whenever we had an air raid, we were so happy. We thought it might bring the war quicker to an end.
No matter that bombs were exploding around you.
Yeah. Because it was very, very frightening.
Yeah. I do know that one of the warehouses that you were imprisoned at you were forced to sleep in for 2 weeks. 2 weeks after you left it, it took a direct hit from an Allied bomb and everybody was killed within it. So
we were not there.
You had already left, but only by a matter of weeks. So once again, you escaped death. I know by that point your mother's strength was really beginning to fade, wasn't it? Because something.
One day we were working in a place near a slaughterhouse when they let out a bull to attack the people. This bull attacked my mother so seriously, cut open all her mouth, all her face. From that day on, she could never work anymore. She was laying in a sick bay in the camp, very, very ill.
And this was for, the SS did this for their amusement?
To play around with the people.
defiant unless you hear these stories, you know, from people like yourself. You can't believe it, can you? Because it's so, the depths of depravity.
Why would they do that? What reason did they have to do that?
So I know the Allied advance eventually got too close to the camp for the Germans to ignore, and on the 7th of April you were transported to another camp, but this time you were separated from your mother because she was very ill. Yeah. She was on a stretcher, so we were separated. We were on the same train, but not in the same track. When we arrived, we started screaming again, bellowing, "Get off the train, get a move on, be quick." But by then, we didn't have the strength to jump off anymore. We had to roll off the train and hold on to one another to remain standing. And the camp that you arrived at next was, of course...
Yes, they took us on for many miles through a very wooded area till we came to the camp's gate. When we arrived, they opened up the door, the great doors. All along the way, the roadside was littered with dead bodies of people who came on previous transport and couldn't even make it to the camp. When we arrived, the great doors opened up and we were pushed through. The scene that met us there, simply not possible to describe. Here we saw skeletons walking. Their arms and legs were like matchsticks. Their eyes bulged out grotesquely out of their skull-like faces. We simply couldn't believe what we saw there.
And I know that you were obviously very weak, very ill by this point, really, but you had one thought in your mind, didn't you? Which
I wanted to find my mother. We were separated on the journey. I didn't know where she was, whether she died on the journey, or what happened to her. I was walking around the camp for 2 days. Eventually, I found my mother in one of the huts, still alive, but only just. I could tell she was dying. She knew it herself because she said to me I shouldn't cry when she died.
Those were her last words, weren't they, really, to you?
Yeah. Don't cry when
such extraordinary strength of spirit your mother had, that she
was worried about me.
Yeah.
Even about herself.
And there was no more law or order in this kingdom of death, really, was there?
By the time we arrived there, we soon found out that we were in a place called Bergen-Belsen. By the time we got there was no more any kind of organization there. They stopped sending food into the camp. Water supply had been cut off, so there was no water to wash, to drink, anything.
And people were just dying, like you, I think you described.
People were dying. They were walking around and dying.
Just incomprehensible thing for a 15-year-old girl. She were at that point to walk around.
Everywhere you looked, you saw signs of death. People were dying like flies. There was no more roll calls like in all the other camps, because for every 1,000 people alive in the morning, there would only be 700 or 800 people alive in the afternoon. So there was no point counting anyone anymore.
What do you remember, Renee, about your liberation from Bergen-Belsen?
About my liberation, I was walking around looking for my mother. I was walking for 2 days. Eventually, I found her in one of the huts, still on the stretcher, still alive, but only just. I could tell she was dying. She knew it herself because she told me not to cry when she died.
And then the British Army liberated Bergen-Belsen on the 15th of April.
Sunday the 15th of April, we were liberated. Thousands and thousands of people were dying Even after the liberation, over 40,000 people died there every day from starvation and diseases. Amongst them, my father, who died 2 days after we were brought into this makeshift hospital. Can you imagine? They brought German doctors and German nurses to look after us, how they felt after all this time, that they have to look after us now.
So your mother made it all the way to the liberation.
Yeah, and died 12 days after.
Like 14,000 others. Yeah. I mean, I find it so painful to think of you as a 15-year-old girl with no parents, no family, just wandering around. You were sent to the DP camp, which was nearby to Belsen, and
not straight away. I was very ill. The first 2 weeks, the first few weeks.
Do you remember the first food that you had?
Yes. Yeah, I never forgot that. They started giving us very small pieces of bread, white bread, topped with a teaspoonful of stewed apples. That I remember because it tasted like manna from heaven.
But very small amounts.
Very small amounts, because people who started eating more died straight away. We couldn't digest food anymore.
I think it's really important to stress for anyone listening as well, is that even though you were liberated and so-called free, your war was a long way from over. You were a 15-year-old girl living in the shadow of incalculable loss. What did you do next?
After a few weeks, when I gained a bit of strength, they sent me to the camp.
Yeah.
And while I was there, an aunt of mine, my father's sister, who was in an Arabic camp in Braunschweig, she came to Belsen because in Belsen was a register of all survivors. She looked it up and she found my name on it. That's how she knew how to locate me. Yeah. She came for me, and she took me back with her to her camp, Braunschweig. At least I had someone with me from the family.
But that, I mean, that was really your aunt who survived out of an extended family that ran to 200 members. There was just you and your aunt.
Yeah, she survived. And after a few months, we made our way back to Poland to see if there were any more survivors. When we came back to Poland, she found her husband and her son returned from the camps. She was very, very fortunate.
She was the lucky one.
She was the lucky one.
And then you and Aunt Gittel made your way. I mean, I'm condensing the story a little here, but
I found an aunt of my mother's sister,
Aunt Gittel.
In Lodz. She took me in. She shared every little thing she had. She shared with me.
She was a strong woman, wasn't she, Aunt Gittel?
Yeah. She was like my mother.
And together you made your way to Paris. I know I'm sort of skipping a little bit, but I want to get to Paris because Paris is always where your face lights up. Because Paris was a wonderful place for a young survivor to find herself. Tell me about your time in Paris.
When I came to how did I come to Paris?
So it was 1940.
No, because we went back to Poland.
Back to Poland, yeah.
And from Poland was so anti-Semitic at that time, we couldn't stay there. So we left Poland through Czechoslovakia and through Austria. We went back to Germany first. From Germany, we tried very hard to go further. We didn't want to stay in Germany.
No,
we tried very hard. We eventually managed to get to Paris. In Paris, I loved Paris.
Why was that?
Paris was different. Paris was really lovely at that time.
I remember you telling me how you used to love watching the women walking down the street in their new look Christian Dior.
Dior, yes, clothes. And everything was new to me, like the escalators in Paris.
Which sounds funny to us, I suppose, but then if that's the first time you've ever seen an escalator.
First time I saw escalators. Yes.
And you began, did you get a sense of coming back to the world and being treated like a member of the human race again? Again, you'd had so much dehumanization.
It took some time till we started getting a bit of life.
I think you're getting tired now, really. I think I'm just going to ask you one last question, and then I think we might do the little reading and then see if anyone's got any questions. But I think I must just ask you about Charles, because in 1949 something happened that changed the direction of your life again. A wonderful man came into your life. Tell us about meeting Charles.
I was invited to I had a cousin, my mother's cousin in Paris, who survived the war in Paris. His wife was sent away to the part of Paris, where he could survive with his son. He was in Paris, a cousin of my mother's, and he invited me to come to a family dinner. My aunt and uncle couldn't go that day, so I went on my own. I took the metro and I went up. When I came there, he took me by my elbow. He said, "Renee, I want to introduce you to your mother's first cousin." He took me down to a man. He said, "This is Charles Salt."
He was a very handsome man. I can see why he would have turned your head. And you got chatting to him, I know, and one of the things he said to you was,
started talking, yes.
Nelson,
yeah. I was very shy at the time.
Yeah.
No. And he started talking, and he said, "I was at Bergen-Belsen." I said, "So was I." And
it tingles up my spine to think of the two of you. You must have even maybe brushed shoulders at the camp afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely, because he directed people into the cinema, to the picture palaces and the theaters, and everything. And I used to go there, so he must have let me in as well. Yeah. But of course I didn't know him then.
And he came back. Charles at that point was living in Hackney. You were living in Paris, and he came back many times after that to woo you, didn't he? Took you dancing, long walks through the city, and a romance between you blossomed.
Sort of, yes.
And how long were you married for?
Oh, I was married from 1949 till 2011 when he died. Yeah, 2011 when he died. Yeah.
Wow, 62 years of marriage. And what a start as well. Renee, I am so, as always, I've heard this story so many times, and yet each time I still feel I can't explain the maelstrom of emotions. Yeah, that I feel, it never loses its impact on me. And I've listened to it so many times, but I'm so grateful to you for going over it, as you have done many times over the years through your work with the Holocaust Educational Trust and so many other organisations that you've worked for. And we are so privileged to be here listening to your story. And I think what we'll do, if it's all right with everybody, I know we are running quite late, but if people I don't mind, we'll just finish with a little reading from the end of Renee's wonderful book. A natural part of aging is to remember people and places from the past. The faces that Renee struggled to remember in the grip of a breakdown in her 20s are now, in her 90s, coming back into focus.
I think of my little sister all the time. I miss her more with every passing day. I'd love to know what she would have been like if she'd been allowed to get old like me. Stenya would have been 94 if she were still alive today. I think of my parents every day too, and my grandparents, and all my aunts and uncles, all of whom were so loving and warm. I think of Mama and Vito cooking together in the kitchen, a cloud of steam. I remember my kind, clever, handsome father, and what a gentleman he was. Many survivors will tell you their survival is down to luck and chance. When a, when a flick of a finger to the left or right decided whether you should live or die. I put my survival down to Mama and God Almighty. It is thanks to them that I'm still alive to tell my story. My relationship with God came from my mother. I watched her pray in the ghetto. At 85 years old, it is still the same prayer that I say every night when I go to bed at 10:30 p.m. It gives me strength and comfort. I will never forget Mama or stop speaking her name, for she will always be part of me. Sala Berkovich. Thank you, Mama, for showing me the most powerful and pure love there is.
Thank you so much. Oh, if people would like to ask questions at this point. Oh, that was very emotional, really.
I think we all need a moment.
Let's have some water. Let's have a little moment. Oh.
Mindy said in the chat box, we're all sending you hugs, and I feel the same way. Your story is remarkable. You're a brave woman. You're an inspiration, and we're so grateful you're here. Thank you for sharing your story. I know that wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to hear, but I can't even imagine what it was like to live it and remember it. And you're so incredibly brave to share that with all of us, to remind us what you went through and why we never want that to happen again to anybody. And Kate, you did a beautiful job of sharing that, and being supportive of Renee and allowing her to tell her story. It was a truly
One of the things about this is what a wonderful friendship we have with each other.
A lifelong friend.
Yeah, it's a lifelong friendship now.
I can understand why. And I know we want to open it up to a few Q&A, even though we're over time, but I think, for those who can stay, it's worth it. So if you have a question, you can type it in the Q&A box. You can type it in the chat box. And a little reminder that Kate said that her publisher is willing to do a giveaway for a book with a signed book plate. And that includes anywhere in Europe as well as the United States. It can be shipped from the US publisher or the European publisher. So Renee is going to choose the winner based on the best question she thinks is asked today. So type your questions in. While you're doing that, I just want to read a few of the comments that came in during your talk, because you were so inspirational, Renee. Miriam says, Renee is an inspiration, how she has survived, told her story, and Kate has brought this story to us beautifully. Thank you. Carol, thank you for sharing your story with us. Oh gosh, they're scrolling in so fast. I can't even read it. Mindy wrote, I am terrified reading about it and hearing about it. How strong Renee is to be here and talking about it. It's so important to keep these stories alive. My family came to the US from Poland and Romania, but never talked much about what happened. Renee, thank you for keeping this terrible part of history alive and remembered. I have been to the Holocaust Museum in Israel. It's something I will never forget. I wear my Jewish stars proudly. Camilla, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing her name wrong. Kamila Klausinska Zudunska. Dear Renee, thank you for sharing your testimony and your story with us. We have never met, but I want you to know that your story will never be forgotten. And Zudunska Vola, I send you and Kate warm hugs. Jennifer wrote, all the novels I've read and the movies I've seen, Renee's story is the most intimate and realistic rendering I have ever experienced. Thank you for your bravery in sharing your testament of power and faith. Sorry.
Comments, really incredible.
And the resilience you have. I mean, you've touched so many people today. And I think with all the craziness that goes on in the world with politics and war and the ugliness of humanity and what happened to you, you are a testament to the beauty of humankind in its best form. And we can all share those stories via books, and books are what connect us. And that's what connected us all here today. So thank you, Kate, for working with Renee to share this story, because without you, we wouldn't have known about her. And she deserves to be remembered for everything she's been through and her courage and her strength. Yeah, I can't say anymore. I mean, it's just beautiful. So, we can open it up to questions now. So I'm going to read some of those. Jennifer's question was already answered. What inspired the title of Do Not Cry When I Die? You already answered that, but she was wondering about the alternative title in the UK.
Well, every publisher tends to put out a different book title. It's funny, you think that because it's one book that the contents are identical, but obviously it's down to each individual publisher as to which title they go with. I know Do Not Cry When I Die is very much one of Renee's favourite ones.
I gave it the title.
Yeah, that's the one that stands is most intimate and connected to yourself, isn't it, Renee? But the book is coming out. It's going to be published in France and Italy and Bulgaria, and I think more publishers coming in all the time. So I dare say we'll see a few more variations of the book title. But Do Not Cry When I Die is definitely the one that really you feel.
It came to me in a second. I didn't have to think.
Yeah.
Yes, from your mother, for sure. Yeah. And just a reminder for those who asked about shipping the books in the US, the book is not released in the US until Tuesday. So it could not be shipped to you early. So for those of you who are wondering why you didn't get your book yet, that's why. You will get it once it is published. So no worries about that. Okay. Jay Kocher. This isn't a question, but a comment. I've read many, many Holocaust memoirs, and each one is very special. This one is very special. It's a testament to Renee's courage and tenacity. Thank you for sharing your poignant story, and for Kate for writing it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That's lovely to hear.
Yeah, Jennifer Erickson asked, I am a fourth grade teacher and wondered, as a Holocaust survivor, what words of wisdom would you like to impart to the next generation?
I would like for people to live in peace with one another. Doesn't make any difference what color or creed or religion they are. As long as they can live in peace, tolerate one another, then the world will be a better place to live in.
How poignant those comments sound in the current climate, to hear from Renee's mouth her just desperate desire, having lived through so much, just to live in peace, just to accept, for tolerance.
I know, and it seems like that wouldn't be so difficult, but apparently it is. And yeah, I'm just, hearing your words is a reminder of why that is so important. Next question, Rochelle. What advice would you give people to encourage more resilience and acceptance in the world today?
That's a good question. Roselle would like to know, what advice would you give to anyone, maybe younger people, about resilience and strength? How you kept on going day after day, year after year? Where did that come from? What words of advice would you offer?
To believe in religion.
Okay. Yes, you have strong faith.
I've got a very strong faith, and I always turn to the Almighty God.
Yeah, I think having a faith of some kind, wherever that faith stems from, is enough for you, certainly. Has always been
salvation.
Your salvation. Yeah. And I think for Renee, being with her mother day after day, for people that didn't have a loved one, or the familial bonds, or even there was a thing called camp families. So people who had been separated from their loved ones formed that all important ingredient for survival, which was hope. If they had somebody who cared and looked out for them, whether that was just somebody they had met and bonded with in the camp, you had to have that relationship. You had to have something to live for, someone to live for. And for you, that was your mother, wasn't it? And your mother, it was you. Really always told me that if my mother was not there, if I had
wouldn't have survived.
No
way.
The love, I think faith and love.
And on that note, Becky asked a question outside of your mother. Was there anybody else there at the camp that helped you survive? No.
Everybody was looking after themselves. They didn't have the strength to look after anybody else.
Yeah.
I asked Renee in the course of the research, did you ever come across any other mothers and daughters, particularly at places like Auschwitz? And you didn't, that you were aware of, that there were any other mothers and daughters who managed to stay together. So it was, I mean, who knows? We don't, do we? I'm sure maybe there were, but that was very much, you were a rarity in that sense, which is why you're here today.
There was a few
having somebody to stay alive for.
Yeah, Charlie mentioned, no matter how many times I have heard or read this story, I am in awe of Renee and how inspirational she is. It's a reminder of how privileged we are to live this life. Yeah. Denise asked, during some of your darkest times, where did you go in your mind? Was there a happy place to push yourself to continue to survive?
I always to get to God for any answers, for any help, to the Almighty God.
Yes. Yeah, your faith was important. Julie has a comment. Thank you for sharing your story. I'm 55 years old and first made aware of the Holocaust when I saw Anne Frank's father on Blue Peter when I was 9. Since then, I have read countless books, watched many documentaries and films, and I still can't believe the hatred. I visited Auschwitz a few years ago, and the sight of 2 young girls walking on the train track, hand in hand, draped in the Star of David, just broke me. It was so beautiful. Yes,
You've been back to Auschwitz since many times, haven't you? Which takes, again, incredible courage to go back. She goes back, not any longer, but
no, I can't.
You went back with an organisation called the March of the Living and took part in a big 8 times. No more though. I think we're going.
Julia asked, what would your advice be to some of our world leaders today? They need a woman of wisdom like you.
Well, if only Renee was PM. What would you say to the leaders of the world?
As I said before, they should try and keep peace with one country and another. There should be no wars. We don't want that. Every time I see children, that's how they suffer during the wars, it breaks my heart. So it comes back.
Because it reminds you of your own. Yeah. I mean, Renee was 10 when war began and 15 when you were liberated from Bergen-Belsen. So that's nearly 6 years. That was your whole childhood in essence. Yeah. And the sad thing is how many children around the world today, that age, in refugee camps and,
Yeah, it's Emily and Carol asked a question. I think it was already answered. Listen to your story has made me feel so emotional. How did you stay so strong? Your mother and your faith, right?
My mother and the Almighty God.
Yeah. And Jennifer and Mindy asked a similar question. What was it like for the two of you collaborating on the project together, and how did you first meet?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, how did we meet? So I met Renee, it was back in 2022. There was a new exhibition being launched about photography at Auschwitz. And I went along and Renee was one of the speakers there. and I went as a journalist. And so I remember seeing her sitting there in front of this enormous bank of like photographers and video cameras and TV crews, and she looked so tiny, and I just remember thinking, oh, this is too much. But then she began to speak, and oh my goodness, I was just mesmerized. She just seemed to fill the whole room with her space, you know, with her light. And I realized how clumsy I had been in my assumptions about her being too vulnerable to share her story. And I went up to Renee afterwards and I to thank her for sharing her story, and I wanted to know more about her mother. And we got talking, and then I said, look, have you ever thought about writing your story in the book? And she said, no. Well, you had, but nobody had ever asked you before, which I could not believe that never happened, had it, Renee?
No.
And so we met, and I wrote up a synopsis. It went out to a publisher. She got lots and lots of offers, and then it all happened so fast, didn't it? Because we knew we had to meet the deadline for the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, which gave me about 6 months to research and write it. So it was a very, very intense, very emotional process. And I don't want to really give away anything in the book, but there was a big discovery in the book that really changed everything, didn't it, really? When we discovered about, I don't want to go into it too much because I want you to read it, but the discovery of what really happened to Renee's father. So in a way, the sort of tables were turned when halfway through the process, I found myself having to tell things to Renee that she couldn't possibly have known in the moments of her persecution. That then meant I was the one, you were the one asking me questions, and I was the one telling you. So everything about this book for me was uncharted and raw and emotional. I've never worked on a book like it, and I never will again. But like I say, I feel very blessed really to have Renee in my life now.
I know something.
Yeah. Renee taught me a wonderful word called
The share.
the shed, which means ordained, you know.
Head of it.
Yeah. And we feel that our meeting is Beshet.
And I feel that with you as well. So it's been, I think we've gone over, and I think it was important that we went over. We didn't want to end early and miss out on this important last bit. So those who have stayed with us, thank you for that. I think we have time for one last question, and then we'll do the giveaway. And a lot of people asked about your strength during your time imprisoned. But somebody, I'm trying to find the question. Somebody had asked how you cope, how you find the strength to retell your story now.
Good question.
I tried and made myself do it. It wasn't easy. Every time I finished a story, I felt as though I just got up from the flu. It made me feel ill. But I tried my best to do it. But now I can't do it anymore.
But you've just done it, Renee. You've just shared your story again. I think for me, it's always like a bittersweet thing, like, because I know what it takes out of Renee to tell her story. And so when I'm asking her these questions that I know are going to make her feel exhausted and emotional, and yet she's just incredible. She retells her story again and again and again. And over here in England, around the world with the Holocaust Memorial Day in January, Renee went from TV station to radio to newspaper interview. And I've never seen such stamina. I mean, I was exhausted at the end of it, but this woman, she kept going. And each day I think, where is she getting this inner strength from? Because how do you come up?
My son was exhausted as well.
Your son was exhausting. I was exhausted.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was exhausted.
So Renee was having tea with the Prime Minister, and like, earlier this year met Prince William, and just unstoppable. I tell you, this woman's incredible.
Well, she is remarkable, and it's an honor and a privilege to meet you virtually, to hear your story. I know it wasn't easy to reshare, and we're grateful to you for the strength and courage you've had to tell your story. And also in the book, which I hope everybody picks up a copy, because it's so important to remember why we're all here. We're here to share our humanity, and books have a way of doing that, and people like Renee and Kate. And so again, I just put the link in the chat box for our Adventures by the Book site where you can order the book. And Kate says that if you order the book through us, she will find a way to get signed book plates to everybody. So it may take a little while because she's in the UK, so be patient, but we'll send your books out and then she can send those out when they're ready. So
buy the book, we will find a way to get it signed by Renee and myself. We'll get some nameplates. We'll definitely sort it out. Don't worry. It's
wonderful.
Important.
Thank you. Thank you. I think so. And so, Renee, did you want to pick the best question for the winner of the book?
Okay. Which one did you think? Which question did you come that you thought that stood out? There was
I didn't hear any question.
Oh, okay. What about maybe it's a maybe that was not the best way to, maybe we could just pick at random. Maybe that might be the best way, because I think a lot of the questions were on a similar theme, weren't they? What do you think, Susan? Do you think that's
Sure. And it's how about I'm just scrolling through the list. I'm trying to put my pointer at somebody really random. Okay, how about Sonia Heiserman? Sonia, if you can type in the chat box that you're still here, and send me your email address or email me, and we can arrange for that. I'm at susan@adventuresbythebook.com. You can email me, but let me know you're in the chat box because you do have to be present to win. And if you're not here, you miss out.
Would it be possible to get I don't know if this is possible, but to get a copy of some of the comments in the chat box so that I can, it doesn't have to be today, and then I can read them out to Renee. I think it'd be lovely to go through the comments because I know everybody.
Me too. Yeah. And I will do my very best. I know that Zoom usually sends that to us. I am not really tech savvy, but I think I can manage that. So I will do my best. Okay. Sonia is here. Congratulations, Sonia. So Sonia, can you email me, susan@adventuresbythebook.com, and send me your shipping address and phone number, and I will get that to Kate to get your copy. So
what I might do is I might pop my email into the chat box so that if anybody has any additional questions or comments or anything they want to share with Renee and myself, then I can arrange it. Yeah. So I'm going to put. What do you think, Susan? Do you think that makes sense?
Sure. And I just put mine in there too for because I did want to mention one thing is that for those of you who are not familiar with Adventures by the Book, we have a book club concierge service. And what that means is book clubs can join for free on our website and get access to our authors who go visit book clubs virtually for free. And Kate is one of our authors. So if your book club wants to hear more about this story, you can go to adventuresbythebook.com, look up Kate's name, register your book club for free. It only takes a few minutes. And then you can schedule a free book club visit with her for your book club. Hear more about this entire story, which is remarkable, and hear, everything that Kate went through to tell the story.
And if Renee feels up to it, I'm sure if we did do a book club and your book club approached me and said, look, we'd love to have you to come along, obviously I have to do it on a case-by-case basis, but if Renee wanted to join, then I'm sure we could try and arrange that as well, if it wasn't, all depending on how Renee's feeling. But we're just reading through all these quotes now, all these comments now, Renee, can you see?
Yeah.
Really lovely comments.
Lovely comments. Yeah, I will make sure to find out from Zoom how I get a copy of those so I can send them to you. But everybody's sending wonderful comments. Everybody's sending you hugs, best wishes, thanking you for your bravery and telling your story. For Kate, for being so compassionate and professional, but so human and wonderful. It really was a remarkable afternoon or morning or evening, depending where you're joining us from.
And Renee, do you want anything you would like to say before we go?
I wish them all good luck and enjoy the book. Let me be reading it.
Thank you so much, Renee and Kate. It's been a really special afternoon. I thank you both, sending you hugs from across the pond, and best wishes and congratulations on being a Sunday Times bestseller at age 95, Renee. That's amazing. So thank you to our audience for coming. We appreciate all our adventures around the world. We hope you read the story and remember what Renee went through and how valuable and precious a human life is. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye. And thank you to you, Susan, for hosting.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.